All right, may as well do the third tenet, maybe. I don't know. I should have thought it through a little bit more before I started recording, but whatever. There's attunement. There's specifics to that. You can attune to whatever you like. There was nature being the greatest teacher. Sky, cloud, earth, wind. You know, listen to the wind. You want to be like a Navajo wind talker. You want to do a rain dance sometime down the road, some enlightening, that kind of thing comes in handy. One with nature, Ace Ventura, when nature calls. You know, there's dangers there. Make no mistake about that. But that falls more in with the nature being the greatest teacher. Humility. Stay humble. You know, that's pretty much, stay humble. That's common sense. That's like the basis of common sense. You fall into like narcissism, you get the mirror thing going on, you know, people start validating you just to shut you up. People start validating you to placate you. And that's like when you run into a situation where if you get betrayed, it's always with a smile. You know what I mean? Because you're like training people around you just to smile and be like, yeah, no problem, Hunter Biden, anything you want, dude. You want to go to South Africa, fucking around, no problem, dude. We'll go to South Africa, we'll fix everything, get you, you know, go on safari, whatever the fuck they do down there. No problem, Hunty. And then everybody gets his security clearance pulled. And everybody gets his Secret Service detail pulled while they're in South Africa. Wonderful. I wonder if they're going to do a movie about that. Hunter Biden escapes South Africa. You know what I mean? He could have just chilled, did the Disneyland thing, like, you know, dried up a little bit maybe. Probably wise. You know, so staying humble is important. It helps for merging through traffic. It helps to make a human connection. You know, it helps retain one's empathy for people who may be in a worse off situation. May help one to understand what it's like to be caught in the trappings of, you know, whatever prison or whatever ailments may be affecting them. You know what I mean? Like, if you're feeling good now, and you're feeling like, you know, hey, I'm on top of the world, that's great. But there's a saying, remember the people you see on your way up, because you're going to see them on your way down, too, you know what I mean? It's hard to get on top and stay on top. Like, maybe if you're a raging narcissist like Elon or something like that, you know, or you just got the money to buy off everybody, you know, buy your women, buy all your people, you know, people don't know any better, and you can fucking afford to like pretend you're looking at forks at a dinner table to the point where it's like a farce, or like buy your trucks that like look like literally like one of your kids drew the plans for the truck. Like, more power to you. But I mean, Lao Tzu, I think it was Lao Tzu, is like, to be rich in a society that's corrupt, it doesn't mean anything. You know what I mean? Like, you know, you're rich, you're influential in a society that's clearly fucked up, that's clearly fucking, you know, the peasantry, you know, so to speak, in a Machiavellian sort of way. Like, you know, there's no honor in that. There's no, you know, so it's like, so what? You know, small potatoes. I got rich, I'm getting mine, but everybody's fucked up. You know what I mean? People are so twisted. It doesn't even matter. You can tell them the sky is red, they'll believe it. You can tell them a man is a woman. You can tell them all sorts of things that make no sense, and they have to torture the language. They have to torture everybody around them and it shows a distinct lack of humility. Like when you have to torture people to get them to say what you want them to say, it's that's a distinct lack of humility. So it's like a safeguard against extreme narcissism. And if you find yourself in a position where you can manipulate things, or what you say goes, or you're a shot caller in some aspect, and you find yourself having to torture people to get them to go along with you, it's time to look within. You know what I mean? Because you could lie to other people, in matters of business and warfare. It's kind of the same thing. That's it's standard practice. It's standard business practices. In matters of the heart, you can lie to everybody else. You can't lie to yourself. You start lying to yourself, you start believing your own bullshit, and like you're building a castle of sand, so to speak. Pillars of salt and pillars of sand. You're building a fucking sand castle, and the shit's just gonna get washed away. There's not gonna be anything that lasts. And that's a dangerous straying too far from humility. You can go the other way and be too humble. You can turn into a people pleaser, where you're just gonna start saying whatever people want you to say. You're gonna start making endorsements you don't want to make, and then you become captured by the people who are walking all over you for whatever reason. Maybe it's monetary. Everybody's got to eat. There's common sense to that. And maybe it's influence or power. There's caveats though, because if you go too far, say you are actually a pillar of your community, and now you find yourself at a crossroads, and you have to decide whether to take money from the outside or do what's right for your people. And it's like walking the tightrope. It's like, what's the best thing to do here? You know what I mean? Probably somewhere in the middle, like that middle path, walking the tightrope, the straight and narrow. But sometimes it's not so straight, sometimes it's not so narrow, especially in a city like this, or Washington, D.C., or any other place where, the corruption was there when you got there. It's not like you created it yourself, but you have a choice whether you're going to add to it, go with the flow, or try to improve things. Because there gets to be a certain tipping point where people just aren't going to put up with it anymore. The lengths you have to go to keep people suppressed keeps getting more and more and more ridiculous. Unless the people are starting to regress. Like if they're starting to live in the training simulator, if they're they're not really being adults, or they're just simply so distracted by, I'm just gonna say it, some people there's a giant machine out there, there's a couple of them, look, the left and right dichotomy is a giant machine to keep ping-ponging people back and forth over shit that isn't exactly consequential at the end of the day. These things that people get riled up over, a lot of times they can just come and go like water in a brook, you know what I mean? And you could decide to be like a reed with it, and if the water's flowing this way, you're gonna bend this way, and if the water's flowing this way, you're bending this way. And then people are all about the swamp, so it's like a mangrove tree. And that mangrove tree, you got these motherfucking swamp monsters that are that mangrove tree ain't moving for shit. Those roots are deep, you know what I mean? So you gotta drain the swamp, and that's a whole fucking, it's an ecological fucking thing. You know what I mean? So, there was another analogy of Pike, about humility. He was people are like plants, Ivy League, you know what I mean? Some people are grass, some people are I forget the precise wording on it. Some people like shrubs or, you know, a little tree, and then some people like mighty oaks. You know what I mean? And then you have the evergreens that like they sway, but they're green throughout the winter. You know what I mean? They're unchanging. People like that are very valuable because consistency is key, along with humility. And my particular mindset is attuned in such a way that it all really ties together. As I seen somebody else describe on Twitter, like a lattice work. You know, I'm leery to call it like a web because I'm not like, I'm not a spider. You know what I mean? I know a lot of streamers like them little jumping spiders were popular for a little bit. I'm not, like, I don't have any pets. If an animal is supposed to be free, it should be free. There's no exception for human beings as well. You know what I mean? That's my personal, in my humble opinion, individual free thought should be respected in this country. You know what I mean? You could do it wherever you are. Planet shithole socialist Britain or fucking Europe or China, whatever. They do things differently. But in this country, it's about the individual. You know what I mean? Individuals' rights. Not about the collective's rights. Even though there's some wordage about, by the consent of the governed, and, maybe lady folks roll a certain way. There was something about queerus, how women's perspectives are based on the perspectives of those outside themselves, which is an interesting facet. I've never considered it. I've always looked at every female partner I've ever had as a whole ass individual, and perhaps that was a mistake. Maybe I should adopt a different way of viewing the fairer sex, and that would go a long way in helping me understand, my past relationships and possibly future relationships. You know what I mean? I like to think I'm a fairly reasonable dude when it comes to these things, but it's important to empty that cup. And like, if you see a word you don't know or a concept you don't know, which I'm always on the lookout for, because I'm humble enough to be on the lookout for it, that's a thing. And it's like, who knew? And it may be wrong, it might not be. Nature is the greatest teacher, but I mean, if for human concepts, nature hasn't really, nature, I have a peculiar set of lenses, let's put it that way. Like, I'll look to nature, I won't necessarily listen to what people have to say, even if people are part of nature. You know what I mean? That's like Marcus Aurelius, he was a little entitled. I may also be a little entitled. I have a good setup here. I have, happy as a clam, as they say. But then I saw a meme that said this clam is depressed. And it made me laugh. Because the saying is happy as a clam. Good clam is happy. He's sitting on the fucking bottom of the ocean doing clam shit. You know what I mean? Like, what could be better? Sebastian the Crab, under the sea. Hey, be humble. I'm a fucking crab over here. You know what I mean? This fish is playing the saxophone. This guy's got his fucking drum set. We're underwater, but we're good. You know what I mean? Watch out for the fishermen. Watch out for these motherfuckers who fishing, trying to drag you up to the surface. You know what I mean? Watch out, Ariel. There's nothing up there for you. That dude's got legs. He can fucking take a walk if he wants to. You got a flipper there. You know what I mean? You're underwater here. The problem with Ariel is there was no mermaid dudes around. It was just her father. So it's like a metaphor for like she's gotta go to the top side to fucking find a dude, and she wants a prince. So she's like already grasping for it. Ursula is like got a beef with it or something, she makes a deal with the, with the local octopus or whatever, like metaphor, like, yeah, she's, octopus is like got her tentacles on and everything kind of thing, and it's like, you don't make deals, things that are more powerful than you, and this is back when Disney was good. But staying humble, Belle, she's messing around with the Beast in the